All right. Um, all right, so let's get started. It looks like nobody had um, super pressing important changes again.
Everything looked pretty dry. It's really interesting. It's
Hmm.
hardly
Second
anything in
week
the
in a row.
last 3 or 4 weeks actually, for my domains anyway.
I do wonder if, especially with Wheeler, if he'll be like just careful or something, and not. I guess we'll see. But it also kind of means that we have a little bit of time to get through some of the backlog of um, important changes that we do want to write up and get out. So
I wonder if it's not just Wheeler per se, but yeah, maybe he is being cautious in his directives, but also just the existing staff and them trying to figure out what he's up to and not wanting to make any changes on their own, right? Without knowing what his priorities will be. Just thinking of all the cases where kind of sub departments, sub offices, made their own changes to maybe try to fly under the radar, like switching to resilience as opposed to climate change. So there is some sense that these units have their own authority, right, to make changes. And yeah, maybe now they're just waiting to, uh, you know, uh, holding their flight pattern.
And I'm also not seeing much in the DOE realm. So it's got a different life pattern or whatever, but
yeah, that's a good point.
Are you not seeing changes at all, or just not like significant, important changes?
exactly. The changes are routine kinds of stuff. The stuff that ideally we wouldn't see in the first place, right? But yeah, I mean, they're just updates, right, of routine kinds of things, but no, nothing substantive, really. I would like
Um,
to, at some, I'm sure, I can't remember if this is on the agenda, I'm not looking at it, but I would really like to hear from Rob and perhaps Kevin about this transition to the Wayback Machine as a source and what it really means when we click on and off that checkbox at the top and what we might, yeah, so what that's all about in terms of what we're going to see. So if that can happen sometime during tonight, would be great.
we can start with that if you want. Do a reverse order or yeah, Rob.
Yeah, I need just a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll come to that second. um, so I only got this kind of revised structure out earlier today, so I know a lot of people probably haven't had time to read and comment on it. Um, so maybe we should hold discussion of that for next week, unless there are things that jump out at folks.
Is this something you posted in the channel? Oh, I haven't been. Oh, I see.
It's kind of basically like the discussion we had last week of, okay, there are these different ways people want to engage. How do we build a structure that has room for folks that want like very structured tasks like the weekly monitoring, room for folks that want more like creativity or like longer time scale kind of investigations or other kinds of analyses, and how do we build in that flexibility but also have enough coordination and cohesion. So incorporating all the feedback from last week, um, it seems like a structure not too different from what we have now, with the difference of fewer people doing the weekly monitoring, um, and those people doing weekly monitoring like focusing, you know, on like focusing on that mostly. Of course, people can be part of whatever working group they might want, but having kind of monitoring being its own sub working group, and um, report writing and research, and the report writing maybe taking on other forms of dissemination as well. Um, uh, yeah, to make room for some of those like quick response kind of, and or a visualization or something. But yeah, it does seem like the structure we have now with just like a few tweaks might be a way for people to be able to engage on these different kinds of time scales and with different interests and skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
But we can resume that, or maybe like comment on in Slack on it, and we can try to generate conversation there. Or yeah, Eric.
I mean, I agree with that. I think some conversation there, or even conversation next week with maybe a bigger group would be good. I would just, I got a chance to briefly just read through the structure ideas that you posted, just like a first quick read, along with the other parts of this document. And just the thing that really stood out to me was, I think a lot of people are interested in, this idea of dissemination, as you put it. And I think that's really, I think it's really great that a lot of people are interested in that. So I think some way of trying to like revamp report writing group into dissemination more broadly would be, that would be super cool. I'm glad there's a lot of energy into that, and I'm excited about that. I had the chance to share some of so thanks Rob and thanks Liz for feedback on the visualization of the term changes. I had a chance to share one of those, or a few of those visualizations with some folks in the department here and some students, and alongside other stuff. So there was a whole presentation, and part of that was just some draft like visualizations of these term changes, and those were really stood out to people as opposed to other parts of the presentation. So I think there really is something to new forms of dissemination that maybe rely a bit more on visualization, experiment with that in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, I welcome the opportunity to take a look at it in more detail and have another conversation maybe with a larger group. And I'm happy to do it online too, however everybody thinks it will work best.
Yeah, Kevin?
Yeah, I kind of remember on the topic of visualization, there was this volunteer, Stephen Braun or something. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Has anybody reached out to him about that? Or I don't know. The name just came up, so I was just like, oh, I wonder, like, what's his status or something. Like last message I saw, it's like he was just saying like, I'm still here, I'm still interested, but I don't know what it was he was specifically interested in, or if people were able to contact him or reach out to him.
Yeah, so he's interested in visualization. He's in the research channel, and he said he was going to do some experimenting, and I'm excited to see what he's been experimenting with. So we should just try pinging him again, but I haven't heard from him since he said he's been working on stuff. So we'll see. I know, Gretchen, I think you said Annie is also really interested in visualization. So Yeah, I don't know if she's been working on anything, but I'm sure she'll have some really neat stuff to share eventually too. So.
Yeah, now that her semester's started, I want to find out if she can come to the now Monday at noon meetings and work on things. Oh yeah, we should probably announce too. Monday, the research team changed its meeting time to Mondays at noon Eastern. To accommodate schedules.
I guess one of the things that's, and forgive me since I haven't read your document yet, but certainly one of the things we had talked about was using a favorite term of EPA, resilience, sort of thinking about how when we do have interesting findings, how resilient we can be in terms of timeliness and the ability to pull together something like a visualization to get it out there sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, compelling way, right?
Yeah, what that makes me think of is a couple things, which is that like I think there's a lot of experimentation going on with visualization, which is good, and I think ideally that would lead to like some kind of general formats for visualization, right? If a change comes along that has to do with, a lot of terms changing on a page, or actually, a couple terms changing on many pages, then, I think we have a pretty good way of showing that. For other kinds of changes, we still, I think, have to, figure out good ways of demonstrating, changes in a striking manner. But I'm excited about this kind of experimentation that will help us be quicker and more resilient in the future. But, one of the things that came up in the doc that Gretchen wrote, I think, was like, how do we do that and still, how do we be quick, but also ensure the technical review that we've, had in place for a while now, and that's worked really well for us. That does a good job of catching, errors and in our analysis. So, there might be some trade-offs and challenges there.
But I think there are like also a lot of things that even if we don't like look at any of the other contexts, if we just like can do like a single checkpoint of like, did this change really happen? And it could like speak for itself, sort of. I think there are definitely like situations in which a quick, distribution of information about that could be possible. Even screenshots, like, and just that. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Gretchen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay, sorry I'm a little late.
No worries. Okay, so for the domains, please do update with your thoughts on your domains. Marcy, thanks for updating yours. But just so as we, prioritize and streamline, just want to make sure everybody gets their personal thoughts in there. And for recruiting, I really want to make sure we have kind of our new structure in place, and new training materials in place before trying to bring on a new crop of folks. So the specific efforts towards recruiting people are going to be on pause just until we get this ironed out. But then full force ahead, because I think we do need more hands. Should we do dev team now?
Sure. So the first thing is now we've had the Wayback importing going for about a week. Not quite a week, so I didn't do anything different for the sheets this week, but for next week, I guess, Gretchen, you will get another email, maybe 2 more emails, probably one that is the version that you would get if it were only looking at Internet Archive data, just the way that what you get today is if it's only looking at Versionista data, and then one that is looking at all the data that we have in the database. So what you'd see in that case. The other thing that just went in that's related to that, maybe actually, I can demo this. Can you see my browser?
Yeah.
So this just went in, so you probably won't have noticed this, but it's helpful now that we've had Versionista and Wayback data coming in for the past week. This now has a little thing on the side that says whether the version you're about to select is from Wayback or from Versionista. And then the other thing that's been added that I added last night that I think Marcy was asking about is this load resources from Wayback Machine. That has nothing at all to do with our loading data from Wayback, from like having versions in here that come from Wayback, completely unrelated. What this is about is this is the solution for the issue Justin was asking about, where like how can we get better screenshots. This is not a great solution for the problem, but it's an interim one that works, which is basically if that checkbox is checked, which it is by default, we will try and load all the resources for the page. So things like this styling and layout information, scripts that control how interactivity happens in the page, images, all that sort of stuff. Instead of doing what we have been doing, which is we just have the web page and those links to those external resources just point back to wherever they used to point back, which breaks if the original server was not a secure server. It breaks if the original server, if the version there has changed or moved, because then that link is no longer good. Now, instead, we point to a Wayback URL for the same point in time at which the page was captured. If the capture came from Wayback, then you pretty much know that's going to work. If the capture came from Versionista, then maybe it'll work. It depends whether Wayback had something from a similar point in time that's functional. But it'll give us a better shot at having it work than we have before. So like a page like this, this is what it would have looked like before, right? So it's nicely formatted over here, but the one on the left is really old and all the formatting is totally broken because it's looking for resources that are no longer there. So when this is checked, it loads those resources from Wayback, so you can see the totally different layout that it had before from what it has now. Remove formatting kind of overrides that because then there's no formatting resources to load from Wayback. But they sort of work in concert also, because if you're not loading resources from Wayback, you may or may not have formatting, versus if you remove formatting, you're actually removing formatting. So that's how it works on like a page that's old versus new. Justin was asking for it specifically for this sage grouse one. So like when it's not checked, this has always looked bad, but it's not the same again as having formatting removed, which is still different. But if you add this in, then you actually get a nicely rendered page you can take a screenshot of. And then there's some pages which just like don't work at all, kind of like that sage grouse one, but this enables them to work. It's not universal, it won't fix everything, but it'll work a whole lot more of the time than what we used to have. So that's what that checkbox is. And it's on by default. Theoretically, it's always the thing that you want to have on. So, but you may have a reason to uncheck it for some reason. So that's why it's there for you to mess with.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I'm here for the Sage Grouse screenshots. Thank you. With that, can I ask one question? When you said it'll look, it'll pull styles from from a Wayback image of a similar timestamp. Will it appear in the little date boxes if it goes to a different timestamp?
No. So like the thing you have to keep in mind there that's complicated is that what you're seeing is the HTML for a page that we have captured, and that is exactly the HTML from the point in time that you specified that's in the pull down. That will never change no matter what happens with Wayback. The only piece that's coming from Wayback is the layout information that like adds colors and where things go on screen, or like the images and stuff like that. But the text and the main content is never coming from Wayback. And so it'll never change based on that checkbox. And then the way Wayback works is every time you ask it for something, if it doesn't have it, but it has it at some other point in time, it'll redirect you to the like next nearest point in time. And in a web browser, it's like ridiculously hard to control or know that that happened. And in fact, like with Wayback's own snapshots, when you're browsing through the UI, that could happen. Like you could be getting styling information from a totally wrong version of the page compared to the content you're looking at. It's kind of funny the way Wayback captures stuff that can happen. And there's not like a good way to know about that. So it is possible it could happen. In general, like the result isn't any worse than today, where like the image doesn't load or the styles don't load, or they load but they're screwed up, which is why we have the remove formatting checkbox. Because at the end of the day, like if you really just want to know what's different about the content, you don't want any of the external stuff. You just want to look at the text, and that's the point of having the remove formatting checkbox. Does that help explain that? Yeah.
I'm just curious what the next big project is. Like, what's on the horizon?
Well, so other folks on the team are still working on getting deployment correct. But the next big stuff that matters to you is there are two pieces. One is getting annotations in the UI so that you can make your annotations there instead of in Sheets. And the other is...
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please? Would you just...
One is getting annotations in the UI so that you can make your annotations there instead of in your sheet. And the other is doing kind of automated analysis. So there are a whole pile of like really dumb heuristics we can use to help you better focus on pages. Like the easiest one is was any of the changes in the page text that's readable as opposed to like some piece of source code somewhere. And so we can set a priority for the pages and order your sheets by that, or say filter the sheets to only show things that have like a priority that's above some threshold. So the way we've had the infrastructure for it for a long time for storing this idea of priority. It's a number between 0 and 1, and some automated system can set it, and it gets averaged out between all the automated settings that happen. But we don't have like a pipeline for sending every change to an automated system to score it. So that's the part that kind of has to be added.
Thank you. Report team. Marcy, you want to give an update?
Well, at last, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act report is ready to go, thanks to Gretchen's help, and got the steering committee sign off. And we came to the conclusion that we're going to try to do an exclusive with a reporter whose name is Elizabeth Sjogren. She works for what used to be called the Center for Investigative Reporting, and she had been an NPR environmental reporter as well. The Center for Investigative Reporting changed its name to Reveal, which is really interesting name change. And she's actually written a lot about science in this administration, science and the environment, and has also written things about birds and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act in the past. So Tully had reached out to her early on when Aaron had made his preliminary findings about the possibility of her doing an exclusive based on looking at a draft, and that was sort of left open. She was sort of interested, but it took us a while to get the report done, and we're happy with it. So we're going to give her an exclusive with our final report if she's interested, and we'll see where that goes. So I'm hoping Gretchen and I just worked on an email and hoping to get it out to her first thing in the morning. So we'll see. That's exciting. And then Justin Derry's report on hydraulic fracturing should be almost ready to go as well. So I think that will need a Gretchen's review with whichever hat you want to wear, as well as steering committee. And then that one would be ready to go as well. It's very close. And then I think Gretchen's been more in touch with Justin Schell about how the sage grouse report is coming, right?
Yeah, that one's coming along too. Justin compiled all of the changes and organized it. I'm just doing a little bit of formatting and kind of an initial. I don't want to do the full technical review necessarily because I do want to do the content review, but I also can do the technical review and give content review to somebody else. But anyway, it'll be ready for technical review in the next couple of days. Eric, you want to give a report on the research team?
Yeah, we met on Monday, and we did a few things. So we, went over some of the visualizations that we've been coming up with and talked through some of those. And then we, Gretchen talked about some of the research that she's been doing on pesticides and changes in pesticide policies, and how we can link those to some of the website changes around pesticide information. And Gretchen, you should definitely jump in here, but kind of what I took away from that conversation was A few things. We want to follow up with another group, the Pesticide Action Network, on developing a timeline of important pesticide-related policy changes in this administration, and to maybe try to link that to, or link website changes to that timeline. But Gretchen's preliminary analysis suggested maybe a lot of the website changes are relatively random and don't have much of a correspondence with the timeline, or not an immediate and obvious, like, okay, the day after this policy change, like we see, or the day before, or whatever, we see a website change. Then also, I think we realized that, like, in some cases, on some pages, a lack of change is actually a meaningful result, in a way, right? Where, like, there are pages that we would expect to see, new pesticide information or new policy information about pesticides, but we have not seen those changes. So it's a bit different of an analysis than we've ever done before, I think. So that was an idea that came up in our conversation, where it's actually the absence of information, and not the removal, but it's the absence, the lack of a change that's significant, which is something we can find when we do more targeted research and analysis rather than monitoring. I mean, I think that really was, Marcy and Gretchen, you should fill in the gaps here, but I think that was the main parts of our conversation.
Yeah, perfect. And discussed more Eric's term analysis and the visualizations, and the next steps on that.
Can I ask a question? So there was some discussion in one of the channels with I don't even remember. Is it Matt Haber?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, around setting up some sort of meeting to discuss regional changes, I think it was. Am I getting this wrong, or is this?
He talked with the interviewing team and Marcy and me about there's a new memo saying that the regions must be structured like the federal EPA. And so that'll mean, one, just like a lot of reorganization, but two, some like kind of key differences with how enforcement is done. And since that's like a major role of the regions, he just kind of offered some insights, because he worked in a regional office for like 30 years and then a federal office for another 5. And he mostly said, like, there are pros and cons. And yeah, but he didn't see it as like, this a totally horrible thing, but just like to be aware that there are these changes happening.
Yeah, I realize it's not a website change per se, but it feels like important content, especially for research. So I was just curious to get the update.
Yeah, and also, I think that it might be worthwhile for us to watch some of the personnel pages and just see, like, are we seeing a significant downsizing in actual enforcement personnel? Because in order to reflect the federal structure, there are actually a lot more management positions. So, like, are we gonna have fewer people like on the ground doing enforcement because there'll be more kind of like, intermediary positions? The other thing that it does, that's also interesting, is that it will move a lot more people under the direct supervision of the regional administrator, which is the only politically appointed position in a region. So I think that's significant too. But yeah, I I've been kind of fumbling in my head just a little bit of like what, you know, just thinking through like if, um, uh, how we might use that information when we look at Superfund pages or, just other kind of like enforcement based pages. Um, um, awesome. Sorry, we're skipping around in the agenda, but it's kind of fun to do that. The other, based on Eric's suggestion from last week, is to give just a quick report back about the All Edgy meeting. And this past Thursday was a lot of the meeting was welcoming and introducing Kelsey, who's the new archiving program or project manager. She seems great. She has a lot of experience with open source and open tech world. She was like the staff member for a startup that don't even understand enough to like know what this is, but like JavaScript enabled hardware. So
Well, that covers a lot of ones. I mean, that's pretty generic.
But is really passionate about environmental issues and climate change, and she seems great. So a lot of the meeting was introducing her, and then from other parts of the working group report backs, EPA is working, or the interviewing group is working on two reports. Not exactly the two that we thought. One is the looking at EPA enforcement and the history of EPA enforcement and any changes in severity and stuff with this administration that Leif is leading. The other is, I think it's going to be really interesting, basically comparing what the EPA has done in this last, since Trump was elected, versus the roadmap that the Heritage Foundation published in 2016 that basically was like, in order to, be more efficient and get, big government out of our issues, deregulatory efficiency, here's what you need to do. And to see what, I read parts of that document and it's kind of terrifying. The Heritage Foundation is terrifying to me. But anyway, and then with the EPA reorganization project, I think it sounds like that's taking a little bit of a back burner because the lead author on that is strapped for time right now. But they still want to work on that in the future. And the archiving working group is working on kind of a report out from the Data Together meeting and onboarding Kelsey and figuring out kind of what their like weekly rhythm looks like. And Kevin, you're here, so you can give us an update on community coordinating.
I had a couple of sit downs with Will Bradshaw, for the CS students, and they were first timers to open source projects. So I kind of just like guided them to like through GitHub and told them just to read through closed PRs to try to get a sense of our project. But as Rob knows, like the project's kind of really difficult to get into, especially if you're a beginner. So we'll see. I'll get in touch with again, especially Will. I imagine during the restructuring, maybe he'd be interested in just monitoring to understand like the process. And then the other big thing is Sarah Lambden, who was she was a more active member before. She was in the capacity and governance working group, but she's holding an event at the beginning of November about information access during the Trump era. This whole thing. It's a joint joint event between the journalists and the lawyers at that City University New York Law School. And so if anybody's interested in speaking, she was looking for somebody from Edgy to speak, especially like web monitoring too, because that's that aligns with the topic of the event. But yeah, and then onboarding Kelsey and whatnot. Yeah, Aparna and I are in the works of trying to do these like kind of short member interviews, the same way that Gretchen did with the web monitoring team. But this would be related to like just Edgy wide and trying to get a sense of like how people their experience in Edgy. So we're working on that and some onboarding materials. Aparna is helping me get like the onboarding process more streamlined, especially because she kind of went through it, not really like the non-boarding that we kind of have. So she understands the challenges and the pain. So we're working on together on that.
Kevin, can you give us a little bit of background on Aparna and her job?
Oh, I guess. Oh, wow. Aparna is the new organizational coordinator. So she'll be working like Edgy wide and kind of like doing a lot of like the administrative work. She's taking over a lot of Nick's responsibilities, interfacing with Public Lab, like with like fiscal reporting and stuff every week, and then at the end of the month. Yeah, and so the reason why I wanted her also to like help with this like member interviewing thing is because she hasn't met a lot of people in Edgy, and so it's been like tough for her. I think she's already been here for like 2 months, but it's just like you know, there's not a lot of opportunities for us to chat outside of work meetings and Slack. So I think this project is just good overall to like give us a better sense of Edgy as a whole, and also like help some of the staff people like meet other Edgy members. Yeah. And she has a background in working in like nonprofits and doing organizational administrative work.
Thank you.
And she's in Toronto. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I knew that.
Oh, and then the last two updates from the All Edgy meeting are EDJ is working on a paper. I don't remember exactly what the topic is, but I know that part of it is actually discussing the public comment process of the one that we just did, the strengthening transparency in regulatory science rule one. And so I think the paper is kind of a self-reflection of sorts, I think. And then I gave an update on the in-progress reports. And that was that. Oh, and people are really interested in getting like in getting more people involved in website monitoring and trying to like help us think through how to do that. It sounds like Sarah Wiley, when some things get cleared off of her plate, she'd be interested in joining the report writing team, and also I know she's really interested in like what kind of one-off public engagement events could be fruitful for web monitoring. And I think that Liz Ulti is also interested in thinking about that. So that could be an interesting collaboration to try to figure out. I think it might be worth a group brainstorm on that as well. Yeah. So those are the updates. What else? Any juicy topics to discuss in the last 10 minutes? PC juicy topics, obviously, but I mean that more as interesting.
Just I started a little note stock, which I said I was going to start, and it was great that Rob actually brought up the CRWU website. That just is a listing of all the acronyms that have changed, where the acronyms have stayed, the letters of the acronyms have stayed the same, but the words have changed. I think it might be sort of fun to do something with that at some point. That might be something that's a sort of a quick thing we can do a blog on or whatever, right?
Do you have any others on that list? Because I'm trying to remember. I swear there's another one.
There is NAREL, N-A-R-E-L, which changed from the
Right.
National Air and Radiation Environmental Laboratory to National Analytic Radiation Environmental Laboratory. And then Sarah found a PIRT, which changed from Pesticide Inspector Regulatory Training to Pesticide Inspector Residential Training. I mean, bizarre, right? But these are the kinds of things, right, that would be sort of interesting to highlight. So I'm going through all our old important changes also to see if something pops up.
It just makes me think that, like, I mean, I don't know what you think, Marcy, whether, like, it'd be worth writing a whole report about these. Depends on how many there are. But, like, it's the sort of thing that we could highlight, and that seems like the scale of something that's not a report,
Exactly.
a full report, and that's just something that, like, goes on a blog or, like,
exactly,
just a tweet, so, like, figuring out what the scales of different, pieces of information are, and then, calibrating with that.
And deciding what level of wit and humor we want to bring to writing as well, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually, I have that same thing going. Remember the pages where there were quotes about the environment, and there were just all these deleted quotes about the environment pinked on the left, and a very few that were sort of predictable ones on the right that were added. And I had a little talk with Annie about ways to visualize that, because anyway, so I'm still playing around with that too, but that would be one that might be fit in the same kind of category, right?
I think both of those are really good test cases for other kinds of dissemination, for sure.
Yeah. So now that the MBTA is over with, I'm going to try to focus on those two. See what we can do.
This is really generative. It's just making me think. There's also like so many of our hanging, like, note stocks could just, they're not going to be full reports maybe, but, like, could be very brief blogs. Like, I'm thinking of we have a note stock on changes that, so pages like CRW where they changed a lot of, they used to link a lot to the climate change subdomain, but then that got taken down. But then somebody's gone back in and, like, replaced the links so that they point to an archive version, which I think is really interesting. Like, somebody's actually like, hey, this is important material, and somebody else in EPA has removed it, but we'll point to the archive. I mean, I think that's, like, not blog worthy, and we'll never find all of these instances probably, but just, like, highlighting a few cases where, like, somebody's trying to make this work still, and trying to, like, keep the EPA website functional.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Sorry, I was catching up on notes. Cool. Well, another avenue to explore. Awesome. I will pull out the action items from here and send that on Slack. And does anyone know, or maybe there's actually instructions on this, but, like, where these videos go, and, like, where I could find a link so I could, like, post a link to the video in Slack. I know people watch the videos. They're on YouTube somewhere, right?
I can I'll add you to YouTube, Gretchen, like kind of at your Gmail, and then I'll share with you like the link to the playlist that these things go to, and then you'll be able to like find them and stuff.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, I can add you and share with you all the different links.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to get in the habit of sharing the link to the video for folks that don't make the meeting. Cool. Well, thanks so much. And we're finishing 4 minutes early.
Yeah. Woo.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.